NBC's Kelly O'Donnell is at the White House. Also with us, Eugene Daniels, Politico White House correspondent and Playbook co-author and an MSNBC political contributor. Kelly, what does President Biden hope to accomplish by going to Angola?
Well, there are a number of things, and they're centered on history, and they're very much centered on the modern moment of so many Americans who have roots that went through Angola and wanting to connect with that. And it's about trying to take a position for the United States on the continent of Africa as a counterweight to China. China is willing to make a lot of investment there, and that shifts the power base. And President Biden and others in his administration believe very strongly that U.S. involvement, investment, and concern about Africa is good in the U.S. national interest because of our adversary, competitive partner, China, and their interest in investing in the continent. So part of what he wanted to do here was make good on a promise that had been canceled a couple of times due to other news events where he had hoped to visit sub-Saharan Africa. He wanted to get this done and acknowledged in his remarks that his time is limited in what is left in his term. So that was part of it, keeping that promise and also talking about things like investment. Here's a portion of what the president talked about. And part of this trip is highlighting the impact of long-term rail on the continent, which should open pathways for investment. Here's part of what the president had to say.
We're building railroad lines from Angola to the port of Lobito in Zambia and the DRC, and ultimately all the way to the Atlantic, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean. We'll be the first transcontinental railroad in Africa and the biggest American rail investment outside of America.
And so that's about the future and about investment, about modernization. But as we've indicated, this was also about looking to the past and acknowledging the important place that Angola played in the lives of those persons who were taken from Africa, transited to slavery in the United States and elsewhere, and how important that is as well, and to recognize that history and to also look toward the future. So it was an important trip, what could likely be the final international trip of the president. That's not certain yet, but just given the few number of weeks left, the likelihood that he would go overseas again is limited. So this was an important trip and something he had wanted to do throughout his presidency. Chris?
So, Eugene, tell us about the significance, I mean, besides the fact that it's probably his last trip, but the significance of this visit for President Biden and his decision to speak at Angola's Slavery Museum.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kelly captured it so well, right? This is any time that a leader from the United States or any country that benefited from the slave trade and the horrors of slavery on this planet, that is important for everyone to hear, right? There's been a conversation in this country for a really long time, at least a few years, about the erasure of history and what should be taught, what the conversation about race in this country should be and what it should look like. And that is something that the president was trying to get across here. I will say also the importance is trying to get in front of, for this country, China, right? When you think about in 2050, so 26 years from now, 25% of the world's population is going to be African, not African-American, not Black, African from the continent of Africa. And so this is a forward-looking policy for this administration to make sure that they are seen on the continent as partners with these countries. For a really long time, America has just kind of not invested as partners with these countries. And so they tried to change that over the last 4 years. And honestly, because of countering China, it's something that could continue under the Trump administration.
So there's also a political purpose. Obviously, I mentioned at the top that Joe Biden said the future goes through Africa. And without getting too far into the weeds, one example, Angola has some things the U.S. would want, not the least of which are critical minerals that are used in things like batteries, EVs, electronic devices. Is this the kind of thing where potentially Joe Biden thinks he can maybe make some progress as his presidency draws to a close, kind of a move to say, I'm not 100% done yet. I still have almost 2 months left?
Yeah, I think so, right? This is the president at the very end. And as Kelly said, to be very clear, he promised to do this a while back. And so this is something we've been waiting on. And they've sent the vice president, the first lady, and many other senior members of the administration and the cabinet to Africa to kind of prove to the continent that they were all in. I think this is one of those things that at the end of a presidency, you realize that you weren't able to finish it off, right? There's no indication that the Trump administration would continue in the same way that the Biden administration has thought of and wanted to invest in the continent of Africa. That's going to look probably a little bit different. And so it is something maybe post-presidency, right? If he actually does care about it as much as he says he does, maybe that's on the list of continuing on post January 20th that he continues. We'll see if that's actually the case, because after January 20th, there's not going to be much that he's going to be able to promise these countries.